Are you in UX? Did you just finish studying UX and you're looking for a job and you want to know what it's like to interview for Google? Then keep watching because I'm about to share with you what my Google interview was like for a UX research position. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It is me, Jenny again. It is so good to see you. First of all, Happy New Year. If you haven't seen other videos of mine, nice to meet you. And today I'm going to just simply share flat out of what has happened in my UX research position interview with Google. You ready for the details? So first of all, before we get into this, let me take this off because I just wanted to look smarter. But I have 20/20 vision. So, okay, first of all, I was ecstatic that I even got the chance to talk to Google about UX research. And then I had bootcamp. So I was like, okay, I don't have masters and I'm a newbie. Do I qualify? But they were really looking for someone who was completely new, entry level field. They were looking for someone who was an entry level, willing to learn, and were able to show us the ropes of getting up to the Google ladder, right? I was also very specifically fascinated because a recruiter reached out via LinkedIn out of anywhere. And people used to say oh, you can't get a job online and you could never find a legitimate job. You're wasting your time. But it's not true because most of the most successful UX research job, UX strategy jobs I found were actually through LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is my happy golden space, okay? It could be different for everyone, and I'm not sponsored by LinkedIn to say this, but I really like LinkedIn for many reasons, but one of them is working in UX and finding a position because the recruiters on there are wonderful. Can't say all recruiters, but a lot of recruiters are wonderful on there, okay? Next, so the process is before you talk to the Google employer or hiring manager, you talk to the recruiter first, and the recruiter makes sure that you fit the criteria. So you do a chat, phone call. I don't think everyone requires this, but for me, it was just a phone call. Within half an hour, the recruiter called and we talked about what I'm looking for in terms of the position, what I'm capable of, and my salary range I'm interested in. So I got that all out. That's a good thing about working with recruiters because there's no question or gray area in that sense. And you could lay it out. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to look for a job to get paid. If that pay scale doesn't match you, then should you be working? I don't know, questionable. So we had this great combo. She liked me, I liked her. She seemed like a go-getter as much as I am, so I was interested. I also got a little insight. She also offered to prepare me for a Google interview, so I was excited. I couldn't even believe the fact that I even got this interview. So I was ecstatic. Okay. The day of the interview comes, and of course everything in my life goes wrong, right? And I'm talking about my dishwasher breaking down and I'm getting massive phone calls out of nowhere. It was so stressful, and I was not even sure if I could make it through the interview well. So I was every single nerve in my bones started to dance in different directions. So I was going crazy. Google is very good at this. They like to find people that are not just clever, innovative, but fast thinkers on their feet that are also good at teamwork. And that combination is really difficult. Well, of course, Google is excellent, right? But okay, so here's what happened. So usually it's when you go into an interview, whether it's UX or other field, usually it starts out tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? What are weaknesses? What are you looking for? What are you there's these very standardized questions, and oh boy, this hiring manager asked me first question, okay? Okay, I'm gonna remind you, this is the first question he asks. Do you have any questions for me? And okay, back on my mind, I was oh my god, I'm freaking out, praying and going crazy. But I tried to calm down. Instantly, I was oh, so I needed a little buying time I needed to buy time in my head. So I had to be like, oh shoot. Like I couldn't say oh shoot. When he said that, I was like, why? I pretended I couldn't hear it for time. So I was like, what? And then, this is so embarrassing. So when he said, do you have any questions? Like, just so you know, I studied about this position. I prepared myself for this interview, and yet I was still very nervous. The fact that he said, do you have any questions for me? And the first thing I said was, oh, this is a position for UX research, right? Just making sure. I was like, hey, just making sure this is a position for UX research, correct? Because I want to make sure I'm applying for the right job. And then he said, yes, that's right. And then while he was, you know, like, oh, that's right. And I was like, it kind of gave me like, I don't know, a little more than a split second to think about questions to ask him, because he was trying to see, the whole point of this interview was not because he thought I had questions. It was because it was a test. He wanted to see how I could talk about my experiences without being asked that question. So thankfully, that kind of led to like, oh yeah, because like I really want to work in research. And then I got into like, okay, so in my previous, I mean, I know you didn't ask, but let me just tell you anyway. I just started talking about my previous experiences and how much like my internship made me realize that I actually am not a fan of working in UX design per se, but rather specifically just for research position and strategy positions. So it really gave him an insight of what I was looking for. So just clarify, UX research and UX design does a little different roles. UX design could mean a lot of different things, but UX research is very specific on doing like parts of the UX design work in general, right? So you don't do any designing, like screen designing. It's not like any UI work. UX research is very focused on the actual research. So you do user research, stakeholder interviews. It could be any, like from group to one-on-one. It could be recorded via screen, like it could be, we did Zoom calls before. It could be that, or it could be in-person one-on-one. It could be voice, just audio only. There's many forms and shapes of user research. There's also research for primary data. There's also research for two types. So primary and secondary data. Primary is when you get the information directly. Secondary is indirect. So primary is something like interviews. Secondary is like articles, or someone else wrote it, or someone already did the research. So you need to be able to be flexible to work with this. Also, where it gets exciting is that after you find all these findings, depending on the project, you might be doing user journey. It's usually that you do user journey, but after doing all this research, you will team up with your UX team, and what you would do is take it to the drawing board. We do stickies, but you could also do virtual stickies, and you lay it all out, the answers. You put them in categories and organize them by clusters of stickies. And what you're trying to see is the standardized user journey. Depending on how much time you have, what the client asks for, or whatever the demand is, you specifically look for specific audiences, and that's the specific user, and you create journeys. So for example, if Google was looking for a customer based product, and they wanted to know what customers do when they first get on the site to, well, before they even get on the site, they want to know before, what happens before, like after they wake up, what are their habits, what do they look for, what do they like, dislike, that, to going and finding how they end up here and what is their trigger, like what is their pain point, like what do they like to buy, what do they dislike, what kind of information makes them comfortable, it creates discomfort. These are important information. You need to figure this out after doing a user interview. So he wanted to know if I could answer all that, if I'm capable of doing teamwork, and how my questions kind of continued from there on. One of the things that I said was like, oh, I want to know if it's remote, what are like my options when in terms of like relocating. Luckily, Google has a lot of offices, so relocating is really easy and doable depending on your lifestyle or if your life changes. So that was lovely. After the interview was about 30 minutes, and it felt like 2 minutes because it was very intense, but it was just like a lot of information, but I felt like I needed more kind of situation. And then it ended quickly. Also, it was really difficult to get him in one time frame to schedule because he was so busy. So after the first interview, I was waiting to hear back a few times. I eventually ended up declining the offer because I got a different job, but it was a very different type of interview I've ever done in my life, not just in UX, but in my whole entire career. So that's what I would like to share. And I know that a lot of people are always looking for jobs in, you know, big tech companies and what it's like. Just know that it's beyond, it's not just an interview, right? They want to know how you think. Especially as a researcher, you have to be very creative yet be able to follow rules. So that's what you'll be tested on. So I don't want to say this because I don't want you to get nervous, but it is an interesting situation. I'm glad that I was able to think quickly, but I'm also human. It doesn't happen to me all the time, so I was a bit lucky, okay? But yeah. So that's it. That was my Google experience, Google interview for UX research. Just so you know, Google is a huge company, so there's so many teams, there's so many managers. With that said, this is just my experience. It's not standardized Google interview process. Okay, everyone for every position is very different depending on your job titles, depending on your management and all that sort. So please note that. This is just my experience. Okay. So if you found this information to be helpful, or you just find me entertaining, then please thumbs up this video for me. And if you have any further questions in regards to this interview or UX in general, feel free to comment below. And if you're looking for a UX bootcamp and you want my recommendation, then I will leave the link down below where you could sign up for your bootcamp. Have a look and see if it could help you. Besides, you'll get some discounts using this link. So have a look and subscribe to my channel if you're more curious about UX. Again, I'm signing off, Jenny B. Doll, and talk soon. Bye.